The cold case that no one ever expected to be solved is, of course, a huge step closer to being solved. The arrest in the Tupac Shakur murder, 27 years later, really shocked everyone last week. And we still have questions about why now,
right.
that the police haven't fully explained yet.
Because the man who is now charged with the murder confessed in 2008 that he was involved.
And has been saying it very openly in interviews that he handed the gun to a guy named Orlando Anderson, his nephew. And Keefe's story is that Orlando pulled the trigger and fired the shots into the car, which Suge Knight was driving. Tupac was the passenger.
Tupac was killed and Suge was shot.
Was hit but survived. So everyone was wondering what Suge's reaction is to there finally being an arrest in this case. You would think maybe he would be happy that there's going to be justice.
Well, also, and is he going to testify? So I spoke with him a very short time ago, and he is in prison right now. I talked to him when he was on the jailhouse phone and wanted to find out what he felt about the Keefe arrest, and whether he would cooperate in the trial. Tell me what your reaction is to the arrest of Keefe D.
Well, surprise, number one, because I didn't think Keefe D would never get arrested. Nor do I want to see him get arrested. You know, let's get one thing straight, first and foremost. You know, me and Keefe D played on the same Pop Warner football team. And whatever the circumstances, if he had an involvement with anything, if he didn't have any involvement with anything, who want to see? I wouldn't wish somebody going to prison on my worst enemy.
The DA says that Keefe D was in the car with his nephew, and that presumably his nephew, according to the DA, is the one that shot Tupac, and that it was done with the full knowledge of Keefe. Do they have it right?
It was only two people in the car. And Pac not going to tell the story. I ain't going to tell the story, but I tell you this. And I never had nothing bad to say about Orlando because, number one, he wasn't the shooter. Number two, he came to my hearing and told to let me go and tell the truth. They still didn't let me go.
If you are called to testify in this case?
I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be.
Why not?
Yeah, I wouldn't be.
Why not?
Well, number one, because I'm not going to get on the stand and testify on somebody for what?
They seem to be saying that Orlando was the shooter and Keefe was in on it, that he had full knowledge of what was going down, and it was revenge for Orlando getting beaten up by Tupac and his team at the MGM after the Tyson fight. Is that correct?
No.
Then who shot Tupac?
It wasn't Anderson, so that's all I got to say about that part.
To summarize, you are saying Orlando was not the shooter, although you won't say who the shooter was. You are not saying whether Keefe was involved in any way in the shooting, and you are saying that if you're called to testify by either side, you will not comply, you will not testify. Do I have that right?
1,000%. I wouldn't go, I wouldn't testify, none of that. At the end of the day, free Keefe D.
You know what's really interesting is that he is pulling back from Keefe D's own statements.
Right.
Which is
But I will
bizarre.
say, so Suge is saying it wasn't Orlando Anderson, which is something that has been widely believed on the streets and alleged in interviews. Keefe D himself has said it, that Orlando is the person who pulled the trigger, and Orlando Anderson died a couple of years after Tupac did in a separate shooting.
I think everybody else in that car, there were 4 people in that car, and everybody's dead except Keefe.
Right.
And so now Keefe has said he was involved. Suge is intimating, at the very least, that he's not involved the way the DA thinks he was involved.
So the fact that Suge is saying, he's saying it's not Orlando Anderson.
Right.
I hear that. but he's not going to say who it is, which to me makes me feel like him saying it's not Orlando Anderson doesn't really carry as much weight either, because the reality is Suge is never going to snitch on anybody.
He's never going to snitch, and he's never going to testify. And that was clear.
Him not testifying, I would think that the DA in Las Vegas is not counting on Suge to be a material witness.
I think they're counting more on Keefe's own words.
Right.
I think that's
what they're going to lean into.